Okay, so we're gonna get straight into it. I can't tell you how many times I get calls, texts, all of the above in regards to this right here. There's so many people that I communicate with on a regular basis that are screaming help. They're saying my life is in chaos, right? So as we look at this problem of chaos on this continuum, we understand that there is something that we have to do in order to move away from chaos. And what we are moving towards in this case is peace, right? So my life is out of order. Something is not functioning properly. Something is dysfunctional. And I want to get to this place of healing and wholeness, aka peace. Remember, this is the continuum of life, so it necessitates a conversation about time. So we're discussing how over time do I move from chaos to peace. I think one of the main things that we have to look at, that we implement on this continuum of time, we've talked about this before, is order. Order is extremely important. So if I want to stop chaos and prevent myself from moving even further backward and begin to move forward toward peace, I have to implement order. So let's zoom in on what we're discussing, right? So order, as we've discussed before, it means to prioritize, right? In prioritizing, it also means that there are some things that have to be removed from my life. It means that some things have to be arranged in my life. And there are some things that have to be properly sequenced or ranked. So for me, this is what life at a macro level looks like. So let's draw a bucket. I think in this bucket, this is the bucket of life, right? And the fuller this bucket is, the more we have a capacity to function at a high level in life. Now, within this bucket are some very key areas. There are 7 key areas that lead to well-being. These are the key areas. So let's draw the 7 key areas. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so let's label that. Number one is going to be your spiritual well-being, right? Your spiritual well-being, we're going to simplify it for the sake of this conversation, is where you discover your identity, right? You are spiritually well when you understand your identity and you identify the unique specializations and the unique gifts that you've been given to carry out your purpose. Your identity is a reflection of your purpose. So number 1, the first bucket is this bucket of spiritual well-being. 2 is the psychological bucket. What I believe, what I think, how I choose, how I decide, how I see life is all underpinned by this psychological bucket, and it flows from a place of spiritual well-being. So if I'm not spiritually well, I cannot be psychologically well, right? And remember, we're discussing order. So we have to properly arrange and sequence these various buckets, and we have to remove things that are going to disrupt our capacity and cause us to be in dysfunction. The next bucket is our physical well-being, right? How I move. I heard a quote before that I love. It says, my purpose will only take me as far as my body will let it, right? So your physical well-being is extremely, extremely important. Professional well-being, right? That is the work that I do. Right. And it's very important that we have to have this bucket in order as well, because one of the main sources of chaos that I see on a regular basis is people who are lacking fulfillment, or they feel like this bucket is out of order. Right. And I'll actually show you We'll veer off just a little bit. I'll show you why sometimes this professional bucket is out of order. And this is something that we discussed when I was at Wharton, right? I love this framework. So this right here, we'll call this circle what you do or your vocation, right? Now we're going to call this circle what you're passionate about or purpose, which is what you were created to do. Some of the greatest fulfillment in life takes place right here. When what I do is in line and collides with what I was created to do, right? So that's extremely important, right? So what I do is in line with what I was created to do, right? So this part right here is when I can get this part right, that's when I have order in this professional bucket. So let's keep going here, right? So professional, call it financial. The decisions that I make around money, the amount of money that I have, all the problem. What's another bucket? So we'll call this one, we did the spiritual, psychological, physical, professional, financial, relational. So our relationships, like what do our relationships look like? Who are the people in our life? What are the influence that they're having on us? How do they influence us? What are the result of the decisions of their influence? Who are the people that we pour into? Who are the people that are pulling us? Who are the people that are pushing us? All that's important. And then this last bucket is the generational bucket, right? So I think every last one of these buckets is important. So as we have this conversation about order, right? If you are experiencing chaos in any area of your life, you have to implement order. And when we implement order, it allows us to move towards peace. So order, as we've talked about before, is the removal of some things. It's the arrangement and the sequencing of some things. It's the proper prioritization of some things. So you have to look at your life from these 7 buckets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. One of the things that I want you to do, here's a call to action today. I want you to take some time and I want you to rank from strongest to weakest these 7 buckets, right? So if you're very strong relationally, your relational well-being will go there. If you're extremely weak in your identity or your spiritual well-being, then it goes there. Average financially, you make decent financial decisions, you could put it there. If physically you're dealing with some health issues or things of that nature, you could put it there. But the thing that I want you to do is start from strongest to weakest. Once you identify the weakest area in your life, then what you will do is you will look at it from this perspective. What needs to be removed to give me peace? How do I prioritize my spiritual well-being so that I grow in competence or in wisdom in this area? And then how do I arrange my life to where my spiritual well-being significantly influences the decisions that I make as I move towards being healthy and whole in that area? So again, as we look at this whole thing, my life is in chaos. I'm trying to move towards peace. I have to implement order. As I implement order over time, I begin to move towards peace. How do I implement order in my life? I have to look at the 7 key areas of my life. I have to make sure that my capacity is there. Why? Because the best definition I've ever heard for health is when capacity is greater than load. If the load of life and the load of circumstances is greater than your capacity to handle that in any of these 7 areas, you will fold and you will be out of order. And your life will be chaotic and in crisis. So then I have to look at these 7 buckets. I have to remove some things that are preventing me from being well. I have to arrange my life so that I live well. I have to prioritize my areas of weakness so that I can continue to grow and increase my capacity so that I can handle load in those areas. And then I will be able to move towards peace. And again, to recap here, we just talked about one of the greatest areas that people have this chaotic feeling, or they feel chaotic, is in their professional life. Oftentimes because what they do is not connected to what they were created to do and who they were created to be. When who I was created to be is linked and connected, intertwined with what I was created to do, that's where peace happens. And oftentimes the thing that we get messed up is we see titles and we think a title represents peace, or we think a title represents fulfillment. The reality of it is people give titles, God gives vehicles, right? People will give you a title, but that title doesn't move you forward towards the purpose and the thing that necessitated your creation. But God will give you a vehicle. And that is why sometimes you see people who are able to pivot because they understand that this vocational or this professional bucket is simply a vehicle for purpose that moves me towards something greater. Right? So don't get so caught up in the title, but understand that this professional bucket is a vehicle that moves you along this continuum of life towards purpose, towards fulfillment, and towards peace and wholeness. So I hope that helps. Again, your call to action, rank the 7 areas of well-being, and then start to look at what needs to be removed in your weakest area, what needs to be removed, what needs to be prioritized, and what needs to be arranged.